In 2001, a federal court ordered one company to switch off a set of servers, and in that single act it killed the largest music library the world had ever seen and cut off 80 million people from free music overnight. The company was Napster. 2 years earlier, it had not existed at all. Then a 19-year-old college dropout wrote a program in his uncle's office, and within 18 months it had exploded into the fastest-growing piece of software in history, a place where you could type the name of almost any song ever recorded and have it on your hard drive in 90 seconds for free. It terrified the most powerful industry in entertainment. And here is the part that actually matters, the part that is really an engineering story. Napster did not die because it broke the law. Plenty of things broke the law and survived. Napster died because of one specific technical decision buried in how it was built, a decision that made it fast, made it magical, and made it possible to switch the entire thing off with a single court order. Get that decision wrong, and no lawyer on earth could have saved it. The person who lit the fuse was Sean Fanning, a shy teenager obsessed with a simple, maddening problem. In 1999, the internet was full of music, but finding it was miserable. MP3 files were scattered across broken links and dead web pages, and half of what you clicked never downloaded. Fanning's insight was that the files were not the hard part was the directory. What if, instead of hunting across the web, every user's collection was listed in one place, live, searchable, instantly? He dropped out of Northeastern University, and with his friend Sean Parker, he built it. They called it Napster, after his own childhood nickname. It did one thing, and it did it perfectly. You searched, and it found the song on some other regular person's computer, anywhere in the world, and pulled it straight to you. To understand why Napster lived and why it died, you have to understand the one piece of architecture at its heart, because everything hinges on it. Napster was what engineers call peer-to-peer. The actual music files never touched Napster's own machines. When you downloaded a song, it came directly from another user's hard drive to yours, computer to computer. That was the clever, defensible part. But there was a catch, and the catch is the whole story. To let you search, Napster kept one thing on its own central servers, the index, a giant, constantly updating directory of every user online and every file they were sharing. When you typed in a song, your request went to Napster's central servers, they looked up who had it, and then they connected you. The files were decentralized, but the directory, the thing that made it usable, sat in one place, owned and operated by one company. That single design choice was about to become the most expensive mistake in the history of file sharing, because when it worked like a wildfire. Napster spread through college dorms first, where the fast internet was, and then everywhere. Within a year, it had tens of millions of users. At its peak, it claimed around 80 million registered accounts, an entire generation that simply stopped believing music should cost money. CD sales, the record industry's golden goose, started sliding, and the labels understood immediately what they were looking at. This was not a niche piracy tool. This was a mass extinction event for the business model that music had run on for 50 years. So the most powerful players in the industry did what powerful players do. They went to war. The war got a face in April 2000, and it was not a record executive, it was a band. Metallica discovered that an unfinished demo of one of their songs was circulating on Napster before it was even released, and they were furious. They sued, and in a move that made them the most hated band on the internet for a decade, they hired a firm to track down Napster users sharing their music, compiled a list of more than 300,000 usernames, and personally delivered it to Napster's offices, demanding they all be banned. Dr. Dre followed with his own lawsuit. But the real threat was not the celebrities. It was the Recording Industry Association of America, the RIAA, which represented the giant labels, and it took direct aim at the company itself. And the RIAA's lawyers had noticed the exact same thing Napster's engineers knew. The whole network had a single, fatal pressure point. Here is where that one architectural decision comes back to collect. Because the file transfers were peer-to-peer, Napster's lawyers argued the company was just a neutral tool, like a photocopier. It was not doing the copying, its users were. But that argument shattered against a single fact: the index. Every search on Napster ran through Napster's own servers. The company was not a bystander. It was operating a live, centralized directory that pointed directly at copyrighted files in real time, and it had the technical ability to see them and to block them. In A&M Records versus Napster, the courts seized on precisely this. Because Napster controlled the central index, it had both the knowledge of the infringement and the ability to stop it, and that made it liable. In February 2001, the Ninth Circuit upheld an injunction ordering Napster to remove infringing files from its index. And that order was, in practice, a death sentence because of how the thing was built. The court told Napster to filter the copyrighted songs out of its central directory. And Napster genuinely tried. It built filters that blocked file names, but the index was a fire hose of tens of millions of files with messy, misspelled, deliberately altered names, and filtering it perfectly was technically impossible. Block the word Metallica and users wrote it with a 1 instead of an I. Every filter they added either let too much through, which violated the court order, or blocked too much, which broke the product. There was no version of a centralized directory that could satisfy a judge demanding zero infringement. The company was trapped inside its own architecture. In July 2001, Napster shut down its network to comply. The servers went dark. And here is the cruel irony the engineers understood perfectly. If Napster had never built that central index, if the directory itself had been spread across the users like the files were, there would have been no single company to sue, no servers to switch off, and no injunction that could touch it. Which is exactly what happened next, because killing Napster did not kill file sharing, it evolved it. The programs that came after, Nutella, then Kazaa, then eventually BitTorrent, learned the lesson written in Napster's corpse: never keep the directory in one place. They decentralized everything, spreading the index across the users themselves, with no central server and often no central company at all. There was nothing to sue and nothing to shut down. The industry had swung a sword at Napster, cut off its head, and watched a dozen headless copies grow back, each one harder to kill than the last. Napster itself filed for bankruptcy in 2002. Its name and scraps were sold off to a software company called Roxio for around $5 million, a brand that would be passed around for the next 20 years as a legal subscription service almost nobody remembers. The pioneer was dead, killed by the one server it could not give up. So what actually killed Napster? Not the lawsuits, not Metallica, not even the law itself. What killed Napster was a single engineering decision that traded survivability for speed. The centralized index was the best idea and the worst idea in the whole system. It was the best idea because it made search instant and made the product feel like magic, which is why 80 million people showed up. And it was the worst idea because it put the entire network's life inside one company's servers, a single throat for the courts to choke. Every peer-to-peer network built afterward was, in a sense, an answer to one question: how do we get Napster's magic without Napster's kill switch? The deepest lesson here is not about piracy. It is that in software, architecture is destiny. The shape of the thing you build decides how it can die long before anyone shows up to kill it. Napster built a revolution with a light switch on the wall, and eventually someone was always going to walk over and flip it. Napster proved that digital would flatten physical media, that the old distribution model was already dead and just hadn't been told yet. One giant watched all of it happen and refused to believe it. If you think Napster's ending was brutal, wait until you see the company that was offered the future for $50 million and laughed it out of the room. That story is on the channel right now, and the link is on screen.